It was a story straight out of a spy novel, a mysterious weapon used by hostile agents to target U.S. diplomats around the world, a previously unknown technology in the hands of the enemies of the free world. And it even has a name straight from the thriller section, the Havana Syndrome. Now, back in 2016, U.S. staff of the American Embassy in Cuba started complaining of severe headaches, nausea, and other symptoms after hearing high-pitched sounds. An official report backed up reports of brain damage possibly caused by a sonic weapon. The syndrome has been reported from various locations across the globe since then. Now, this has become a political issue as well. Politicians have pointed their finger at Russia as possibly being behind the attacks. Christopher Miller, the former acting defense secretary under Donald Trump, called the suspected directed energy attacks an, quote, act of war. But now, in the latest twist in this saga, a large-scale CIA report into the Havana Syndrome reportedly says that those suffering from the condition were not targeted in a global campaign by a foreign power. In fact, it concludes that the vast majority of cases were the result of stress or other conventional medical explanations. When this story first broke, many scientists warned that the most likely explanation was mass psychogenic illness, or what is commonly known as mass hysteria. Two of them wrote this book together, Havana Syndrome, Mass Psychogenic Illness and the Real Story Behind the Embassy Mystery and Hysteria. And tonight, I've got both of those authors with me. I'd like to welcome Robert W. Ballo. He's Emeritus Professor of Neurology at the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. He joins me tonight from Los Angeles. And Robert Bartholomew. He's Honorary Senior Lecturer in the Department of Psychological Medicine at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. To both of you gentlemen, it's good to have you with us. Dr. Ballo, let me start with you. It seems the CIA now agrees that there's less to this story than some believe. What's your take?
Well, thank you for having me, Brent. My take is this is what we've been saying all along. Certainly, we expected that this would be the final conclusion, if it is a final conclusion. Obviously, this report is considered preliminary. There's a lot of backlash. There's a lot of political implications. But I certainly agree with what they concluded. I mean, we, right from the beginning, felt that we have to be very cautious and consider all possibilities. But now we're 5 years into this, and there's absolutely no evidence of any kind of secret weapon or that any foreign agent is following our embassy employees all over around the world. In fact, every continent now has had some reports of the so-called Havana Syndrome. So I believe.
Do you feel vindicated, Dr. Ballo? Do you and Dr. Bartholomew, do you feel vindicated here?
I think to some degree, because we took a lot of criticism. I mean, I think one of the key things, and I've emphasized this right from the beginning, is that these people have real symptoms, and I have compassion for them. I'm definitely not saying that they're imagining their symptoms, that this is not real. The symptoms are real, but I think telling them they had brain damage is by no means in their favor. And indeed, if you wanted to pick something that would make it unlikely that they're going to get better, it would be to tell them that they have brain damage.
Dr. Bartholomew, how does this actually work? I mean, what are the dynamics behind mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria?
Well, think of mass psychogenic illness as the placebo effect in reverse. In psychology, it's known as the nocebo effect, based on negative expectations. This entire case can be summarized in one sentence. When you hear the sound of hoofbeats in the night, first think horses, not zebras. The doctors at the State Department went for the most exotic hypothesis early on. They went on a search for unicorns. when they should have stuck to mundane explanations. And people say things like, well, the US government's been experimenting with microwaves for years. That may be true, but the US government also experimented for 20 years trying to develop psychic soldiers doing remote viewing. And how did that work out? It didn't work out very well. Just because they're experimenting with it doesn't mean it's true, because there's something called the laws of physics. And the other thing I'd like to point out here is that this shifted from Cuba to other parts of the world later on, because the State Department and the Department of Defense issued alerts around the world to be on the lookout for anomalous health incidents. And then people all over the world started reporting anomalous health incidents, because people have unusual health incidents all the time. And just because they have a health incident doesn't mean it's mass psychogenic illness. A number of these cases are people simply waking up in the morning, having a headache or feeling unusual, and attributing it to this new condition, Havana Syndrome.
Well, Dr. Bartholomew, let me just ask you then, what do you think prompted these physicians, when these cases were first reported, what made these physicians think of the zebra instead of the horse?
Incompetence, really. And look, you had the National Academy of Sciences panel. No one invited us to present on that panel. You had a panel that was essentially loaded with believers and not skeptics. This is a clear case of politics being mixed with science. And whenever that happens, the outcome is not good. I'm sure Professor Ballo and I would love to speak before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and explain more as to what's been going on here. And the other issue here is the symptoms of Havana Syndrome are so vague as to be experienced by any human being who's ever lived in any week of their life. Headache, nausea, dizziness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, confusion, tinnitus, insomnia. And so when you issue an alert around the world for symptoms of Havana Syndrome, and they're so vague, you are going to get a deluge of people reporting similar symptoms.
Well, let me ask Dr. Ballo about this. I mean, we did see studies backing up claims of directed energy injuries. What do you make of them?
Well, they were false. Simply, it were leaks to the press initially that there were MRI abnormalities. That would be a really important and significant finding. But when the actual data was presented, it turns out that the MRI scans of the brain were normal. There were a few nonspecific changes that we would expect to see in any group of people of that size. And so the whole idea of MRI abnormalities was just bogus. And then the testing that they reported that suggests there was brain injury or brain impairment, these were non-specific tests, for example, eye tracking and reaction time things that anybody with anxiety would show the same abnormalities. And they really didn't have an actual adequate control group. Yeah, so the data was flawed right from the beginning.
I've got about a minute left, Dr. Bartholomew. I'll let you have this last question. I mean, how often does this phenomenon occur? I mean, is this rare, or is this something that keeps popping up all the time?
Look, there is a long history of mass psychogenic illness, and it's very much misunderstood. You know, there's a problem when Pamela Spratlin, the former head of the Biden panel looking into this, was interviewing Havana Syndrome victims and said, you know, I am considering the possibility of mass psychogenic illness, and she was forced to resign because of the public outcry. And I'll leave you with this.
Yes. A
line from Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream, or in the night, imagining some fear, how easy is a bush, supposed a bear. And in this case, we're looking at the Russian bear. It's all psychology.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, too, and we are grateful that both of you gentlemen took the time out, especially on this Friday. Dr. Bartholomew, I think for you it's Saturday morning, to talk with us. This is enlightening, and this is an important discussion. Appreciate both of you talking with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.